Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Right, so I've started stripping the bike down a bit further with a view to getting the motor out. So I'd already removed the tank and the fairings and the airbox and the seat and all that kind of thing previously for troubleshooting the bike. So they were already off, so that kind of gave me a head start. So this morning what I've done is I've removed the carburetors, as you can see. That's them over there on the bottom of the workbench. I've also removed the battery, the vacuum hoses, and the fuel pump and the fuel filter and all the associated hoses and cabling and whatnot. And I've disconnected most of the plugs from the wiring loom. So the wiring loom is now disconnected from all the sensors and ignition and whatnot on the engine. So that's the engine pretty much kind of disconnected. Then what I've done is I've removed the radiator hoses and drained the coolant into that bucket. That's the top and bottom hose off, and most of the other kind of smaller hoses that kind of circulate coolant around different parts of the engine and whatnot. So that's all off. And I've also managed to unbolt the bracket, the radiator bracket from the bottom of the motor. So that's the radiator's just held on at the top now, so I'm going to remove that next. I also tried to remove the oil filter. I need to drain the oil and remove the filter before I remove the motor, because I want to reuse that engine oil as it's quite new. But I've not been able to get that filter off so far, it's kind of stuck on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the radiator and the exhaust out of the way first, and once they're gone then I'll try and get that filter off. So that's it. Afternoon. Right, as I mentioned in a previous video, the engine in the ZX6R has terribly low compression, 50 psi in one of the cylinders and 75 on another. So as you can see, I've started removing it from the bike. I've stripped off all sorts of stuff, carburetors, exhaust, radiator, etc., and supported it on wood, and I'm trying to get the trying to get the motor out just now. I'll probably do like a slideshow or something of this. I was going to put it on video, but my camera didn't work out, so it might just be a slideshow of that. And then what I've done is I have got a replacement motor, which is here. It's a ZX6R motor from a different year. It's from 1996, but as far as I can tell, it is interchangeable with the motor in the 2000. It's pretty bare motor, there's very little on it. It's not just the carbs and the exhaust that have been removed. It's like there's no starter motor, there's no water pump or anything like that, so I'm going to have to take all of those bits off the motor on mine, and hopefully they fit, and if they won't, I guess I'll have to get them off eBay or something. So that's basically the story with that. I'm going to give it a bit of a clean up, and oh yes, the other problem with it is you can't really see from here, but it came from a bike that had been crashed, so there's damage to the alternator cover, so I'm going to have to replace the alternator cover, and also the flywheel apparently is damaged, which is in there. There's a little bit of damage to the edge of the flywheel, so I'm going to have to replace all those bits. That's fine. I'll get them from this motor. I'll basically take that cover off and take the flywheel, and I'll take the water pump and the starter motor and everything else off here and put it on that one. So that's the plan. We'll also need to give it a good clean up. It's quite dirty, as is usually the story with second-hand motors. So I'll give it a go with the wire brush and some white spirit and whatnot, and try and get it all scrubbed up and quite decent. The other problem that I've got with this one is that I can't get this bolt out. This bolt is basically kind of seized in. It's come out a wee tiny bit. I've managed to get it out a couple of millimeters by putting like a chisel on the end of there and whacking it with a hammer, just battering it with a hammer as hard as I can. I managed to move it a couple of mil, but I'm really struggling to get that out. So I went to the hardware store earlier on and I bought a gas blowtorch, and I am going to try and put some heat on it and loosen it up and see if I can get it loose. I would like to put all of this on camera, but the problem is I don't have a working camera at the moment. All my cameras haven't been used for a while and they've all died. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to put this on camera, because I'm not sure I want to be handling the blowtorch in one hand and my phone in the other. Otherwise I would have put it on camera, but anyway, there we go. So basically the next step is just try and get this motor out, swap the starter motor over, do a compression test on that one, hopefully it'll be fine, and then start cleaning it up and moving all the other bits and pieces over. So that's going to... That was a bit of a drama, if I'm honest. So after lots of heat and GT85 and hammering, I managed to get these tie bolts out. They put up a real fight, but I won in the end. There's the other one there. That one wasn't too bad. The top one was absolutely bloody awful. I managed to whack them out eventually using a tie bolt and a hammer, and gave them a good soaking in the GT85. I don't know where that's gone. Somewhere. Anyway, yeah. So the motor is now out of the bike, as you can see. Once I'd got all the bolts out, basically what I did was just sort of grabbed the bike by the subframe just under the seat unit and just kind of basically lifted it up as high as I could and just kind of like wrestled it off the motor. And the motor kind of the motor was sitting on the wooden blocks, and it kind of, the wooden blocks have kind of shifted a bit and it's all ended up kind of tipped over, but it doesn't actually seem to be going right over, which is lucky. So I'll probably get that up on the wooden blocks in a sec, because I'll need to pull all the bits and pieces that I need off that one to put on the new one. So that's the bike without a motor in it. It's surprisingly heavy. Even without the motor out, I kind of thought, well, it'll weigh not very much once you get the motor out. It's still damn heavy. Like, you know, to kind of actually lift it right up. I managed to lift lift it up until the seat unit was kind of, you know, just about under my chin. But it was a bit of a fight, you know, it's a bit of a wrestle, but I got there in the end anyway. So yeah, so I guess it's a question of kind of on with the next bit.